Trump critic Bill Maher was just interviewed by Trump sympathizer Piers Morgan about a number of topics, but most especially Maher's recent controversial visit to the Trump White House. And despite Morgan's many attempts to lure Maher further right and further into Trump sympathy, Maher refreshingly dug his heels in and doubled down on his many criticisms of Donald Trump, insisting that he has not and will not go MAGA, and actually shut down Morgan a number of different times about Trump's various excesses and authoritarian impulses. It was great. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, got a couple of clips to play of this conversation between Piers Morgan and Bill Maher. They both frustrate me, Morgan more so, because Morgan, I think, is less honest, is certainly somebody who grades Trump on a curve, and I don't like that. Bill Maher frustrates me in the sense that he gives more oxygen to niche culture war issues than I'd like. I disagree with him on certain foreign policy takes. But when it comes to relentlessly criticizing Donald Trump, recognizing Trump as an authoritarian, and also recognizing that for all its faults, the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party, Maher has been fairly reliable. And there was a lot of concern after Maher's visit to the Trump White House that he would deviate from this and bend the knee. So far, he has not. And I'm going to play clips which should encourage some people who recognize, whether we like it or not, Bill Maher is a major figure in political commentary, and hope that he continues to, at the very least, be an ally in the anti-Trump movement. We'll see what happens, but so far, so good. We're going to play this clip and unpack it together.
Or it's just, we thought the country was full of good people, and they're actually full of really shitty, horrible people. Deplorables, that whole thing, calling them and thinking of them as deplorable. And I just don't think of him, of a Trump voter, as necessarily deplorable. He could be, absolutely. And so could someone who voted for Kamala Harris be deplorable in their own way. Now, it's also not equivalent. I make no fuzz on it all the time. I'm very clear about it. I think the right is more dangerous. I think what's going on in this country is a shit show. I mean, shout out to my writers, because we have been as hard on Trump as we ever have. The stuff we do, I mean, if you think I'm the guy to avoid because I'm not going to be hard on Trump now, you're missing actually still, excuse my immodesty, the sharpest, hardest, funniest taking down of MAGA Nation and the right. And, you know, the thing is, I'll also do it on the left when but they're not in power now. So they're not.
So, again, does some of the whole both sidesism frustrate me? Yes, but where Bill Maher is different from most enlightened centrists, and again, that whole notion, well, both sides are kind of the same, you know, how can you choose? It pisses me off to no end because it is so dishonest, it is so untrue. Bill Maher, at a bare minimum, seems to be clinging to the fact that there are meaningful distinctions between two sides. And he says, even now, after having met Trump, after having said what I said about Trump, I recognize that Trump is worse than the Democrats, whatever my criticism of the Democrats are, and MAGA is worse than the Democratic Party. And I love that. And he's saying it to somebody who is perhaps the guiltiest out of any major political commentator, Piers Morgan, of both siding an issue. Well, sure, Trump has lied 30,000 times, but if you ever tell a lie once or twice as in public office, you're basically a liar too. It's basically the same. You have no moral high ground. And I love it. You can see it on Morgan's face. It's like, oh shit, okay, he really isn't walking away from this. He really still continues to believe, rightly, that Donald Trump is worse. This is good, okay? Now, there's a lot of bad in this thing too, in this conversation, but we're going to focus on the parts where Bill Maher continues to emphasize that he has not fallen under some sort of spell by Donald Trump, which is encouraging. We'll continue with this clip.
You know, opinion. It wasn't too slided either way. There was Fox, there was MSNBC, but then if you wanted down the middle, you know, CNN.
Well, Ted Turner always said to me when I worked there, he said, never chase the ratings. He said, the ratings will come to you if you're seen to be the impartial one. And I thought there was a lot of merit in that. And I think that the more partisan CNN has been perceived to be, with some good reasons, with some of the hosts they've had, I think that the more they've lost that reputation,
well,
the more difficult it's been for them.
And I must say this about them in that battle, a lot of that they could not help because of who Trump is. How do you stay impartial when he is telling a giant lie? Then you have to say the president just lied, and now you've lost.
But I think
35%.
Well, I'll tell you how I think.
So, This is good. Again, does the centrism trope piss me off? Yes. But the fact of the matter is, Bill Maher is recognizing that, what so many people like Piers Morgan call as biased media is actually just the media telling the truth about Donald Trump. When you are dealing with an authoritarian, malignant narcissist who lies a disproportionate amount, who does a disproportionate amount of bad things, what do you want? Do you want artificial balance where they grade Trump on a curve like Piers Morgan most often does? Or do you want them to tell the truth? And if the truth is, yeah, this guy is just worse. He's dumber, more dishonest, more dangerous than the other side. Are we supposed to pretend that that's not true? So I love that. He shuts it down. I'm like, no, CNN's not partisan per se because they often criticize Trump. It's just that Trump does things that merit criticism more than most politicians. And I'll point out, Piers Morgan, because he did work for CNN, but he's also been on Fox News. He's a Fox News contributor who works for the New York Post, a conservative publication. He's like a columnist for them. If partisanship is the reason that CNN's ratings have suffered, and I'm not entirely sure that's true. Actually, I remember in college doing a report on this, that the evidence at the time was that CNN's relative lack of partisanship was the reason they were losing viewer share, because viewers wanted a partisan agenda. They wanted a Fox News agenda. To a much lesser extent, they wanted an MSNBC agenda. But if partisanship is the reason that CNN is losing viewers, then how do you explain Fox? Because Fox's viewer share has only increased, and they are more partisan than any of us. Fox had to pay the biggest defamation settlement in history of American politics, American law, because they knowingly signal boosted Donald Trump's 2020 election lies. There is no counterpart to this in the so-called liberal media. So if partisanship is the reason that CNN's viewers are flagging, or viewership is flagging, that doesn't make any sense, because that would mean that Fox would also be in a similar position, and they're not. So again, I love the fact that that Bill Maher continues to point that out. We're going to play another clip here as well, starting with this one.
I just don't know what the alternative is, and there's no good. We're already fucked. By the way, I was the one who kept saying this all those years. I said, if you let this keep going, this slow-moving coup, this is going to get to the place where, honestly, are we really ever going to have another real election now that they have, he's got his guy in at the FBI. This is what I kept saying. What if he wins again? He's going to replace the people who stopped him the first time, the Ratzenbergers in Georgia, who would not say, okay, I'll find you 11,000 votes. The decent Republicans said, no, they're gone. This is what I was warning about. Now the head of the FBI, the Justice Department, these are all complete Trump loyalists. Obviously, we see it at the Defense Department. In that world, he fired the guy who was his own appointee of a commission, the election commission, the long title I don't remember, but something like Security and Cyber blah, blah, blah commission. And this guy said this election, the 2020 election, was the freest and fairest. And he wouldn't, now he's going after that guy for basically, he wants to prosecute someone for telling the truth.
But what does it say
about elections?
But what does it say, Bill, about?
And then, of course, Piers Morgan, rather than engage with that, then says, well, what does it say about how the Democrats lost to this person? I understand, because Piers can't engage with the substance. We understand Democrats have their issues. Their approval rating is in the toilet because Republicans obviously hate Democrats, and Democrats hate Democrats as well. We're a circular firing squad at the moment. And I think it's perfectly fair to criticize the Democratic Party for its political failures. That's fine. But Piers won't substantively engage with Trump's political failures except under very specific circumstances. What Donald Trump is doing, think about what Bill Maher is saying. He's talking about Chris Krebs. Chris Krebs was a Trump appointee to the DHS cybersecurity division. And when the 2020 election unfolded, Trump was the incumbent president at the time. He was demanding evidence that the election had been stolen, but the election wasn't stolen. And Chris Krebs told the truth. Mechanically, this is the most secure and safest election in American history. Trump didn't like that, so he fired Chris Krebs because he didn't like what he had to say when what he said was the truth. And then, to add insult to injury, when Trump gets reelected this last term, he signs an executive order just a few weeks ago ordering a DOJ investigation into Chris Krebs. You don't just fire the guy whom you appointed for telling you the truth. You're going to prosecute him for telling the truth. And there is no counterpart to this in the Democratic Party. And again, I appreciate, if nothing else, Bill Maher will recognize those differences, and they don't have to be coaxed out of him. He will volunteer them to others who will never recognize those distinctions, or if they do, it's like pulling teeth. And so I definitely encourage you to watch the full thing. Bill Maher says stuff in here that I disagree with. They also discuss the recent op-ed by Bill Maher's, I guess they were friends, Larry David, co-creator of Seinfeld and How I Met and Curb Your Enthusiasm. I almost said How I Met Your Mother. Curb Your Enthusiasm. Because Larry David published this really funny guest essay in the New York Times called My Dinner with Adolf. And you can imagine what it is if those of you who haven't read it. It's basically it's a parody of what Bill Maher did by having dinner with Donald Trump. It's about somebody who has dinner with Adolf Hitler. And it's really, really funny. And Maher's asked about it. And he's, for the most part, fairly gracious. He's like, yeah, it's fine. I disagree. He says, if you invoke Hitler, you lose the argument. I don't think invoking Hitler is an auto loss in an argument. You should probably make the comparison gracefully, right? Actually substantiate the comparison, but the comparison is fairly obvious. What Larry David is saying is, okay, using the most hyperbolic example, Adolf Hitler is a monster, and it doesn't matter if you find Adolf Hitler charming. Hitler was he loved dogs, right? Hitler reportedly gave gold watches to subordinates who quit smoking, so he didn't support smoking. These are not reasons to like Hitler, even if you note them. I like dogs, right? But that doesn't mean this. It doesn't change who Hitler is, right? And so, what Larry David's point was in the essay was, hey, Bill Maher and other people who are looking to engage with Trump, fine, but understand that it changes nothing about who this person is. And if a person uses their incredible power to inflict great evil on the world, but interpersonally they are charming, that is irrelevant. It is irrelevant. And I will say, Bill Maher acknowledged that after his dinner. He said, listen, it doesn't matter what Trump was like in a private conversation with me. It matters what he does on the public stage. And I think Bill Maher should just keep that in mind as he continues to criticize Trump. Don't double, it doesn't matter if you found Trump personally charming. If you want to note it, fine, but it's not so significant as to be worth revisiting. What matters at the end of the day is that Donald Trump is the most powerful man on earth, and he is using that power to hurt people here and abroad. That matters infinitely more than how he treated you at dinner. And I think you should continue to remind people of that, especially because Fox News and others are going to take your dinner and run with it. Like, oh, God, even Bill Maher got along with Donald Trump. You should be pointing out, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Donald Trump is still a terrible president. He's still a terrible person. And I hate what he's doing to this country. I think that's the direction that Bill Maher has continued to go in based on his most recent episode after the dinner with Trump and then this conversation with Bill Maher or with Piers Morgan. I hope that that's the direction because as far as I'm concerned, that's Bill Maher's utility to the extent he has any to the liberal political movement. I hate his culture war takes. I think he gives them too much oxygen. His utility is that he's a relatively prominent voice who has been relentlessly, and I would sometimes even presciently, anti-Trump. He was one of the first, if not the first, to recognize publicly and to predict that Trump would not leave power peacefully. And he was right. So as long as Bill Maher continues to principally and in good faith oppose Donald Trump and not indulge false equivalence in both sidesism, that's really good. And I'm somewhat encouraged based on this conversation with Piers Morgan, if nothing else. Morgan's attempts to lure him further into the Trump camp failed spectacularly. And you could tell Morgan didn't want to engage on the substance. But in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.